This is Michael Popok, and by the looks of things, it's time for Legal AF After Dark. The Trump trial in New York turned into its third week. We break down on Legal AF so far all of the witnesses, and not just what they've testified to, but what it means in terms of impact on the jury and the prosecution's pace of proving their case. We do it one place on Legal AF. Take a listen.
You know, there is this harmony, this kind of orchestral, directorial aspect to being a prosecutor in presenting the evidence and how you start it. You almost think about like a concert, right? You don't want to bore your audience when you begin the concert with like the worst song or a new song, right? You always hate when you go and you see a band that you love and they start off and they're like, all right, I'm going to play you a new song off an album that you haven't heard yet. You may like that, but you don't want to hear that yet. You want to start off strong. And that was the point that you made, Popok, that you thought they were going to start off strong, right? So you go David Pecker, who tells the story. Then you start, to your point, you then have witnesses who then just show, here are the documents, here are text messages, here are business records, here are bank records. Then you go, here's Keith Davidson, another major player. Then you go, okay, here are more Trump texts, here are more Trump messages. And then you go Hope Hicks. And so it's been just from a professional perspective to watch this. It's just been very impressive to just
trial aficionados like you and I watching them.
Exactly. It's been great. So let's just start with the most recent witness, though. Hope Hicks. It's on everybody's mind, just as a way of background for everybody. The background of Hope Hicks: she was a teenage model. She started working for the Trump organization shortly after she graduated from college. When Donald Trump decided to run for office, she kind of then became this like press secretary of the nascent kind of campaign. And then she became the press secretary when Trump ultimately won and disgraced the office. She was the communications director from 2017 to 2018. She stopped working there at 2018. Then she returned in 2020, 2021. She was there for the insurrection. She's testified before the January 6th committee, but she has not spoken with Donald Trump or people in Trump's orbit for several years, was one of the first things that she had talked about. She's represented by an independent counsel, not like a Trump-appointed lawyer. And Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, our co-host on Legal AF, was in the courtroom. And just a reminder, Karen worked in the district attorney's office for nearly 30 years. She was the number 2 at that office, and sometimes she served as the acting district attorney, like the top spot. So she was there. She observed it. And I just think it's so important, Popok, in our reporting, like when you go to the courthouse and you debunk Donald Trump saying that, like, oh, people can't go there and protest and that it's being blocked. I think it's so important that we have hosts like Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, Harry Littman, and others who are actually in the courtroom telling us, so we're not just giving you like speculation. So this is what Karen Friedman-Agnifilo said. She left the courtroom. She was going to her next meeting. And so when Karen explained what happened with Hope Hicks, she was quite literally in like a hallway. And as you know, KFA, Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, has been reporting with us from like buses and trains and taxi cabs because she wants to get us the information first. So she leaves the courtroom, and this is exactly what she told us about the Hope Hicks testimony. Let's play this clip.
The prosecution started asking her about this payment that was made, and I'm trying to think of exactly what it was because it was so powerful. She basically said that later on, after he was already president, they had a conversation about the payment to Stormy Daniels, and what he said to her was, "It's a good thing the story didn't come out before the election." And as she was saying it, it felt like a Perry Mason moment because she very much was saying, she very much was confirming what the prosecution theory was that the whole reason they suppressed that was because of the election. And at that moment, she started to cry, and her voice cracked. And then the defense attorney, Emil Bove, got up and asked her a question like, confirm what your job is, or something like that. And then she broke down crying. And, as a defense attorney, she just basically gave the prosecution what they needed. They tied the primary reason that Donald Trump wanted this story not to come out before was because of the election. And I think the gravity of what she had just provided to the prosecution, she broke down crying.
So Michael Popok, you heard Karen Friedman-Agnifilo describe what she observed with Hope Hicks. Of course, we've gotten reporting not just from KFA, but numerous others who are in the courthouse who we work with, and just other great reporters who work for other outlets. So we've gotten a wide array of perspectives here to synthesize. Popok, what do you make of Hope Hicks' testimony on Friday?
I like the way you started it, Ben, by describing who Hope Hicks is. She was very candid. I did a hot take on Hope Hicks. I said she's going to be devastating for Donald Trump. She's going to destroy the Melania defense, which we'll talk about in detail here, which seems to be based on the opening statement made by the incredible shrinking Todd Blanche, who I haven't seen in the courtroom do anything substantively other than gag orders and the opening. He's turned it over to his colleague who works under him, Emil Bove, who's been doing the cross-examination of all the major witnesses. I'm actually quite surprised by that. Indicates perhaps that Blanche, I'm the lead trial lawyer in my cases. And yes, I have colleagues that have handled cases with me, but like the main witnesses of Hope Hicks and Keith Davidson, turn it over to my junior colleague. I doubt I would do that. I'm wondering what that signals. But back to Hope Hicks. Hope Hicks is a self-confessed to be inappropriate inexperienced for the jobs that she held. She told, in her testimony, she told the jury that she was shocked when Donald Trump offered a 28-year-old, no press secretary experience, Hope Hicks, the job of press secretary for his campaign. She said she thought he was kidding. She laughed. He said no, and then eventually she was offered the job. Hope Hicks is one in a series of Melania lookalikes that are in Trump's orbit. Here's a picture of them. Margot Martin is the new Hope Hicks. She's in the courtroom. She's 28 now. She's a deputy communications director for Donald Trump. She's on the left. Melania there. Then you've got Hope Hicks. That's Kristi Noem, but I would put the fourth one in as Alina Habba. If you line all these people up, you'd think they were trying out for Fox News, but they're not. They're all have leadership or communication roles for Donald Trump. She also testified in, which I think completely destroys the Melania defense, which is, I didn't do it because I was trying to interfere with the election. I was just trying to protect Melania. Well, it's a number of flies in the ointment on that. First of all, where is Melania? A powerful moment as a defense lawyer, if I were handling the case, which of course I never would, neither would Ben, neither would Karen, would be to have Melania in the courtroom during Hope Hicks's testimony. You want to see waterworks for Hope Hicks? Bring in Melania and have her sit behind Donald Trump in the gallery. That didn't happen because this story doesn't make any sense. And the jury are human beings. And to believe the story that he was doing this to protect Donald Trump, then what is to make of what Hope Hicks said, which is she did not believe Donald Trump on a key point. She said that Donald Trump told her, isn't it great that Michael Cohen on his own selflessly gave Stormy Daniels $130,000 to try to act like he wasn't involved with them as the mastermind of the orchestrated conspiracy between David Pecker, Michael Cohen, Alan Weisselberg, and with Donald Trump at the center to pay off women like Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal and others who had negative stories that would interfere with his election results as we moved into October and November of 2016. That is the story, okay? And that is the facts on the statement of facts that the prosecutors are methodically making their way through, witness by witness, document by document. This Melania story is blown apart both by Hope Hicks' testimony that when Donald Trump said, oh yeah, it was a great Michael Cohen just selflessly made a payment. She says, I didn't believe that. I didn't believe, under cross-examination, I didn't believe that. Why not? Because I never saw Michael Cohen as doing anything selflessly or with charity. He's a person that try to take credit for everything. I did not believe Donald Trump. So what do you have? You have the jury hearing that Hope Hicks, who comes off very credible with her crying and all the rest of it and her demeanor, that she thinks Donald Trump's a liar on a key point in this case. The other thing the jury's already heard before Hope Hicks even gets there. Remember, somebody like Hope Hicks is a moment in time, but she follows a sequence of other events that have already happened that the jury has already heard. And if they don't remember, they will be reminded of come closing and other witnesses as we move through this case. They've already heard that Donald Trump wanted Michael Cohen to delay the payment to Stormy Daniels to see if he could avoid paying it outright and get elected without and keep her story off the front page of having sex with Donald Trump outside the marriage while Melania was pregnant with one of her children, Barron. If he could get elected without having to pay her, that would be fine with him. Well, what happened to the Melania defense? I mean, how does Melania get less hurt or less embarrassed if he's president? So that is below. They've already heard that. Now they've heard from Hope Hicks, this reluctant witness that who Trump apparently did, according to courtroom reporters, including I guess Karen, never looked at her, kept his eyes shut during the whole thing as she testified. Now did she give a couple of little little kernels to the defense on the Melania defense? If the jury even bought it, which they won't, maybe. Said, well, he cared about Melania. All right, so a husband cares about a wife. He valued her opinion. Okay, same thing. He was in control of his own PR. Well, that makes sense. He's in control of his own defense strategy, pushing and shoving his lawyers to do his bidding. I mean, the jury hasn't heard one new bit of evidence in favor of the defense, my position, from Hope Hicks. And yet on the very moment when she knew she was crushing Donald Trump's hopes and dreams of a defense, she burst into tears. And believe me, not only our KFA in the back stairwell of that dingy courthouse that she used to work in noticed that, but the prosecutors noticed that, and they are going to remind the jury of that in their closing when they get down to the closing argument. Last thing on Hope Hicks, who is basically done. And you made a good point about her not being, hasn't spoken to Trump in 2 years, didn't take any new jobs with him. She doesn't really have to any longer. The reporting is that she's about to marry the number 2 guy at Goldman Sachs, the major investment firm, financial services firm in New York, who may at this moment have more money than Donald Trump. So she doesn't really have to kowtow to the Trump orbit and in her testimony. And I think, as we expected, that she was going to be, I think the jury will find her very effective as a truth teller. And the few things that Emil, the lawyer for Donald Trump, was able to get out that they'll try to spin together as some sort of Melania defense will fall under the weight of the mountain of additional evidence and testimony that will be adduced during this trial by the prosecution.
Andrew Weissman, who was in the courtroom as well and who's been reporting on some of these developments, says the following: "This is why Hope Hicks is such a devastating witness against Donald Trump. Hicks makes clear that Trump knew of the Cohen payoff scheme to Stormy Daniels. 2, even if you believe his statement to her that he only learned after the fact. 3, her testimony sinks Trump's defense, since he is on record in a civil case admitting that he reimbursed Cohen the $130,000. And 4, Hicks establishes that Trump knew that the money was for Daniels' silence, not for the claimed legal fees for ongoing legal work by Cohen." I think of all of those, number 4 is the most important part right there, that Trump was aware that this was hush money payments for silencing her. If Trump's going to try to argue that the payments that he made and his signature is on to Michael Cohen are for other things, it's going to be clear that he specifically knew that Cohen had paid off Stormy Daniels.
You know what proves that point, Ben, before you move on? The fact that they gave Michael Cohen what's called a true-up payment and paid him $400,000 for a $130,000 payment. Let me just explain it quickly. If it were just a payment to Michael Cohen for his income, okay, then they would just pay him for his legal services, the $130,000 for whatever those legal services were, on the fact that 2 days earlier he set up a new sham company, went to his bank and took out a loan, and then turned the money over to the lawyers for Stormy Daniels. So that's a lot of things that the jury's going to have to disbelieve in order to believe Donald Trump. But then if it's just $130,000, let's take Trump at his word for once. It was a $130,000 payment for legal expenses. I don't know how he paid his taxes. Then why is it for $400,000? And why is it include what Michael Cohen will ultimately testify as a true-up payment? Meaning he'd have to record that on some tax return for this company that he set up or for himself as income. It's phantom income or income to him, meaning he'd have to pay taxes on it. He didn't want to pay taxes on it. Trump didn't want him to pay taxes on it. So he got a payment so that when he, and I'm sure Michael will testify, though, when he put this, recorded it on his tax returns as quote unquote income, he had the money from Trump to pay the taxes. You don't do that when I'm a lawyer. I get a payment from a client. The client pays me. He doesn't pay me and then pay my taxes on the payment. And so that whole thing, that whole structure of the true-up payment and paying Michael Cohen $400,000 to cover the tracks of a $130,000 payment in order so he didn't get screwed at tax time, what does that say? That says Michael Cohen is the conduit for Donald Trump and Donald, not the other way around. This other theory of the defense, the rogue Michael Cohen theory, is also going out the window through Hope Hicks. That Michael Cohen on his own to kind of bully his way into the campaign, into Trump's good graces, just decided he would kill the deal. We know that's not true because Pecker testified that the only reason he didn't make the payment directly to Stormy Daniels is because he got screwed by Trump on the payment to Karen McDougal for $150,000. And he's like, I'm out. I'm not spending more of my employer's money on buying another story for Donald Trump and not getting reimbursed. Hence Michael Cohen. What's the common denominator for this episode so far? The jury is watching and listening, and you can't pull wool over their eyes, and the prosecutors won't let the defense.
And I think this is the simplest argument to make to the jury too. If Michael Cohen went rogue and did things that he wasn't supposed to do at all, that weren't in a retainer, that Cohen went rogue, assume that's the argument, then why did Donald Trump pay him?
Right.
And then why would Donald Trump pay him extra?
Right. Rogue payments. Rogue
you are so rogue. You are acting so out of authority that I'm giving you a bonus. I am going to give you triple the money because you are a rogue, awful person.
That's
Come
so
on.
good.
That's the most obvious explanation. But there's more too. There's lots of video of Donald Trump praising Michael Cohen in real time. Then
welcome back. That's what we do twice a week on Legal AF, the podcast. Join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the MeidasTouch Network on this YouTube channel. You knew that. You're right here now. You'll find out why we call it Legal AF. You probably can figure it out. And pick us up on audio podcast platforms of your choice. Free subscribe to the MeidasTouch YouTube. Help them get to 3 million free subscribers. And then if you know all about Legal AF, we thank you for being here. But take that clip. You can be our ad hoc marketing department. We need one. Take that clip, send it off to people in your life and say, hey, here's this show, Legal AF, that I enjoy a lot. Maybe they'll join our audience. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, we invite you to join Legal AF every Wednesday and Saturday. And then the leaders of Legal AF do hot takes about every day, if not every hour, at the intersection of law and politics right here. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.